Volkswagen recently introduced a thoroughly updated version of its Tiguan, introducing a new look and also new engine options. And this is what it looks like if you splash out and get the R-Line model. At £32,730, the R-Line currently sits at the top of the Tiguan range, but soon there'll be a full-fat R version with 316 brake horsepower. So what I want to know is the R-Line all the car that you need, or should you wait out and get the R version? But before I get into the review, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. Let's kick things off with the new design. The Tiguan has a completely new front end with a more aggressive bonnet that's a little bit flatter at the front, and there's also a deeper grille, which really gives the car a bit more of a presence. Now, being the R-Line, we get a front end that's inspired by the Tiguan R, but while the R comes with black highlights, this one has chrome bits around the front, so you know it's a little bit more luxurious and less sporty. Down the side, there's not a huge amount of differences, apart from we've got here the 20-inch wheels, and of course you get a smattering of R badges. And at the back we have new LED tail lights with a slightly deeper look to them, plus fake quad exhaust pipes. Stop doing this, Volkswagen. In the back, we've got 520 litres of boot space. However, you can actually slide the rear bench forwards to open up 615 litres, which really isn't bad compared to the BMW X1 and the Nissan Qashqai. However, it's worth noting that if you go for the e-hybrid version, the amount of boot space shrinks to 475 litres. Now, naturally, the difference between an R-Line and an R is the performance. So in the R-Line we have two engine options. One is a 1.5 litre petrol engine developing 148 brake horsepower, or there's a 2 litre diesel which you can get in 148 or 198 brake horsepower form, and there's also a choice of front or all-wheel drive options. So the car I'm in has the 1.5 litre petrol engine, and you can only get that in front-wheel drive form. And what's remarkable is, I mean, today is a cold day, but it's by no means freezing, but I was still able to get the front wheels to spin up when pulling out of a few junctions, and it really did catch me by surprise. But that's the impressive thing, is we've got 148 brake horsepower in what is quite a big family SUV, and it really does feel effortless. But if I put it into sport mode, you really do get quite a considerable shove. Yes, it's not going to feel like a full-blown R because they have 316 brake horsepower, but really, you do feel as though you have the punch if and when you need it. But let's not kid ourselves, there is a difference between the R and an R-Line, and that's what you sacrifice with going with the latter. It's cheaper, you get a very similar interior, and you get enough performance, but it's not a performance car for quite obvious reasons. With that out of the way, let's talk about tech. So in this model, we've got the standard 8-inch infotainment system, but you can upgrade if you want to a 9-inch system. But personally, I would stick with the cheaper one because not only does it look just like the better version, it's got the same graphics, it's just as responsive, and it's really crisp, but you actually get physical dials. So yes, there are touch icons on the side for shortcuts, but things like the volume knob you can actually physically turn, and on the bigger version that's all done on a slider. Speaking of touch controls, this is something that really is quite annoying with new VW products, and the Tiguan R-Line is no exception. So let's say I want to change the climate controls. It's a chilly day, I want to turn it up. There's no button to physically do it, it's all done on sliders. And it just feels so vague because no matter how long you spend in a car like this, you have to look down, and that's taking your eyes off the road. It just doesn't seem like the safest thing in the world to me, and I don't know why VW has stuck with it. It's far worse on the new Golf, to be honest, because at least you have a dedicated climate section down here, which you don't have on the Golf. It's all done through the infotainment system. But still, it's just a bit vague, it's a bit fiddly, and ultimately doesn't feel like the safest thing. Now, I'm about to contradict myself slightly because I see a lot of critics don't like the haptic buttons on the steering wheel, but I really like it. So some say Just like the dash controls, it's all a bit too vague, but the benefit you have here is that when I press down on a button, you get a slight rumble to confirm that you've hit something. And because it's all within reach of your fingers and you don't have to physically lean down to press something, it becomes quite intuitive pretty quickly. Now, all R-Lines come with a digital cockpit, and if you watch this channel a lot, you'll know that makes me very happy. I just feel like if it's not a performance car and it's something that you're going to be using every day, it's a daily commuter, just give me something nice and high-tech and clean to look at. And there's nobody better, I think, than VW and the VW Group when it comes to making these. You get the same systems on Porsches and Audis, and they look magnificent. Although I've said I'm really not a fan of all these touch controls, the actual quality of this interior feels really nice. In fact, I feel like it's a big step up from the Golf GTI, which I drove a couple of months ago. And one thing I absolutely love about it as well is just VW do the best steering wheels on the market. I know that's an incredibly niche thing to say, but your hands are on it all the time. But they're just so beautifully sculpted, particularly in this R model, of where it's kind of got these grips around where your hands lay. It does feel very performance focused. It's just such a lovely thing to hold. Now, I'm cruising along the motorway at the moment, and the car just feels so calm and quiet, and the ride is really lovely. We're on the bigger 20-inch wheels, but this is absolutely fantastic to drive, and it's just really what you expect from a high-end VW product. It's a very comfortable and serene place to be, and I could very easily see myself just munching miles in complete comfort. The steering is standard Volkswagen and also just standard VAG really. It's vague, there's not a lot of feedback, it's extremely light, but it doesn't matter really. This isn't a sports car. The great thing about an R-Line is that it has the looks of a performance model and feels like a performance model on the inside, but is comfortable and easy to live with. And so while I'm not a particular fan of the steering, and that really just goes for VW in general, it does the job. It's light, it makes a big car feel very easy to maneuver, particularly at low speeds. So I can't complain. If you want to engage your inner performance driver, you can use the paddles on the back of the steering wheel to change gear. However, at low speeds you can't hear the engine, which is a really good thing. And if you're revving it out, it's going to sound absolutely dreadful because it's not a performance car. So I don't really know why you'd want to use these paddles, but they're there if you need to. So let's answer the question, should you go for a Tiguan R-Line or wait and go all out on the R version? Well, as you probably expect, it really depends on what you're after. If performance is really important to you and you want that sensation of just knowing that whatever situation you're in, you can just pin the throttle and get out of it, there's nothing really that compares to a proper VW R product. Now, I don't think they sound particularly well. I was driving the T-Roc R last year, and the interior doesn't feel all that different to the regular versions in them. You just get a big shove. Which brings me on to why the R-Line feels like such a brilliant package, because you have a lot of what makes the R really great, such as this more premium interior with a slight hint of sportiness, but at a much cheaper price. Now, pricing hasn't been announced for the Tiguan R in the UK just yet, but we're expecting it to cost around £45,000, which is over £10,000 more than the bog standard R-Line. Now, naturally, if you want a more R experience, you want to go for, let's say, the all-wheel drive, most powerful diesel version, that gap closes down to about £6,000 because you'd be paying 39 grand for the top of the top range diesel R-Line. So the Tiguan R-Line is a superb family SUV, and I would have one over the Tiguan R. I haven't driven a Tiguan R yet because it's not available in the UK, but when it is, I'll be behind the wheel and check out that review for my definitive verdict.